Thank you again, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by saying I am going to be voting yes on this budget. Let me also recognize that it's Thursday afternoon and some of y'all have a ways to drive. But some things are too important not to bring to light. Let me also acknowledge that I am thrilled that we are increasing the award for the regular Hope Grant and the regular Hope Scholarship from 90% to 95%. That is good, and that's why I will be voting yes. But I want us to recognize what we're doing and what we could do in the hopes that those who ultimately end up on the eventual conference committee or our friends across the hall or the governor's office will take to heart when considering what ultimately comes before us at the end of this session. When this session started and the governor made his recommendation to move Hope grants and scholarships to 100%, I came to this well and I said thank you. This whole house stood up and clapped. We had not fully funded the Hope Grant or the Hope Scholarship since 2011, and that was a big deal. The difference from what the governor has recommended and what is in this budget that we're going to vote on today is $26 million. $26 million is a lot of money. Anytime you've got a million on the end of something, that's real money. But we've got to put it in perspective. The difference for the scholarship is $25 million. The difference for the grant, which goes to our students who attend our technical college system, is $1.3 million. $1.3 million that we are withholding. $25 million that we're withholding from the scholarships. Now, my friend Chairman Hatchett said that money doesn't always go as far as you think it should, and sometimes that's true, but not here. We have the money to return the full promise of hope to all of our Hope Scholars, not just those with a 1200 SAT score. My friend said we need to preserve the integrity of the Zell Miller Scholars, that we need to recognize that they were told that if they worked hard and got the 1200 SAT and the higher GPA, that they would get 100% of their tuition covered. That's exactly what they're going to get. We made them a promise. If you do this, you get that. In 2011, I was here when those so-called hard decisions were made and we cut Hope scholarships and Hope grants for others. At the time, we cut the grant for anyone who didn't have a 3.0 GPA, which was the first time we'd ever tried to impose a GPA requirement on the grant. Now, luckily, in the wisdom of this body over a couple of years, we took that back. But we were told at the time that the reason that we were going to lower the Hope Scholarship amount for those without the 3.8, for those without the 1200 SAT, was not because we wanted to reward those with the 1200 SAT with more, was that we didn't have enough to fully fund tuition for all those Hope Scholars for everyone, and so we had to make choices. And it was the wisdom of this body to have that higher amount for those that had the higher GPA and the higher SAT score. I disagreed with that. I thought that there were different priorities that we should have focused on. But nevertheless, that's what was happening. But we never, ever said, no one in this well said, we want to differentiate between these groups because we think those with a 1200 SAT score should have it and those without it shouldn't. We said we don't have enough money to do it for everybody, so right now we're only going to do it for those with the rigor. But there was always the ability to do it for all the other Hope Scholars too if there was money. That's what we talked about. That's why the factor rate was invented, and that's why the governor always had the ability to move that up and down depending on how the lottery was doing. Y'all, the lottery's doing great. The other thing we did in 2011 was we changed the reserve requirement. So we are required to hold 50% of the prior year deposits. Right now, that's about $800 million. That's what we have to hold in reserves. That's great. We want to have reserves. We want to make sure that the money is there. Some of y'all may not know, we are currently holding $1.9 billion in reserves. Billion with a B. We're required to hold $800 million. We're holding $1.9 billion. That means we're holding $1.1 billion more than the law requires. I started out by telling you the difference between what the governor recommended and what we're doing is $26 million. That's 2% of the extra reserves that we are holding that we are not required by law to hold. 2%. Why would we deprive tuition coverage for all Hope Scholars? All of them have met a merit requirement. Every single one of them has a 3.0. Every single one of them is putting in the time and the effort. It's just that some of them don't have a 1200 SAT score. We could debate the SAT all day long. But I will tell you that all Hope Scholars all across this state are worthy of our investment at them at 100% if we can afford it, not just those with a 1200 SAT. This is very personal to me. I was one of the first classes of Hope Scholars in this state back in the 90s. I was a good student. I had a 3.8 GPA, higher than the 3.7 you have to have. This is the second time, at least, in this well that I've talked about my SAT score. I barely had 1,000 on the SAT. Not because I wasn't smart, not because I didn't work hard. There are just some things that come out in these tests that those that grow up in poor households or those like me that grew up in households without college graduates, it's just different. We test different. It doesn't mean we're not going to get to college and kill it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I did. I was worthy of my state's investment, and there are kids all across this state that are worthy of this investment. And I'll tell you, those kids that don't have the 1200 SAT, they're more likely to come from households where they're going to be the first person in their family to go to college. They're more likely to come from household incomes less than $40,000 in income. They're more likely to come from the rural parts of our state, ladies and gentlemen. They are worthy. I'm sure there are some that are thinking, Stacy, it's 5%. They need skin in the game. They've got skin in the game, y'all. They're paying fees. They're paying housing. They don't pick up the phone at night and tell mom and dad that they maxed out the credit card again and they need more money, because guess what? Mom and dad don't have it. If you don't have a lot, 5% is a lot. If it's $300, if it's $500 and you don't have it, it might as well be $1 million. We have $1.1 billion that we don't have to hold. And we are going to deprive the students of this state that have earned hope because we want to treat the Zell Miller Scholars a little bit better. Let me talk a little bit about integrity. In 2011, when we made those changes, when we changed, just to recap, before the changes in 2011, if you had a 3.0 GPA, you got 100% of your tuition and your fees covered at Georgia public colleges and universities. We changed the law that said to say, if you have a 3.7 and you have a 1200 SAT, now you're going to have full tuition, but everyone else will have a percent and we'll let you know. There were some of us here at the time that obviously didn't want this to happen at all, but begged. At least can we grandfather in the students that are in high school now, the students that have been told their entire academic careers that if you have a 3.0, your tuition is going to be covered. Or even if we can't do it for the kids that are in high school, can we at least do it for the students that have already started college, that are in their freshman year, sophomore year, junior or senior year, where we've said, if you do this, we're going to cover you? No. That, ladies and gentlemen, was a broken promise. Again, we never promised these Zell Miller kids, you're going to get more. All we ever promised them was if you meet these rigor requirements, you're going to get 100%. And we told the other Hope Scholars that if we had the funds, we would make sure they had it. We never said we're going to treat you different for the sake of treating you different. And that's what we're doing today. So again, I'm voting for this budget because 95% is better than 90. But I hope that those in this body that end up on the conference committee and those across the hall and those in the governor's office will take to heart what I've shared here today. We have the money and there's no reason not to spend it because, ladies and gentlemen, Georgia did not approve the lottery for the sake of having a lottery. They approved it to support education. There is no benefit to education for piling up $1.1 billion in extra reserves beyond what the law says that we have to hold. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the well.